Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. A trade union is an organization of workers who come together to achieve common goals. Things like protecting the integrity of its trade, improving safety standards, and better wages and benefits. Decades-old unions have represented and protected the rights of the Bahamian worker, but recently everything seems to have gone haywire. Most of our unions have claims of being disrespected or ignored by the government. They call them reprehensible actions and have threatened to take action until they get what they want. Indicators that we are in a state of industrial unrest. Our topic tonight is union unrest, tales of black summers and the likes. And our guests on the esteemed team of trade unionists, Kingsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Services Union, and Belinda Wilson, President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer, and we're back in a moment. Welcome back to On the Record. Our topic tonight is union unrest, tales of black summers and the likes. Our guests, Kingsley Ferguson, President of the BPSU, and Belinda Wilson, President of the BUT. We have some guests who don't like acronyms, so I'll explain. The BPSU being the Bahamas Public Services Union and the BUT being the Bahamas Union of Teachers. Belinda, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
Kingsley, welcome to On the Record. When we opened the show, we spoke about really the state of the industrial unions, the state of workers in the country, referencing even that we may be in a state of industrial unrest. I'm going to ask both of you your assessment on the state of workers and unions and relationships in the country today.
Well, I do believe that we're heading towards a state of unrest. I believe that if there isn't a better relationship as it relates to labor matters, if there isn't a better partnership, we are going to find ourselves heading towards a number of stalemates on issues that can be readily addressed without any friction, so to speak.
I believe that the rights and the benefits of workers is being diminished. And I also believe that we've gone back many years, because as I would have read Sir Randall Fox's book, and you'll be aware that the Bahamas Union of Teachers, we just launched our history book on January 10th of this year. And my husband was reading Donald Simonet's section, and the same things that Mrs. Simonet spoke about, who would have led our union over 25 years ago, are the same issues that I'm faced with as the president or the leader of the Bahamas Union of Teachers. And I thought about the more things change, the more they remain the same.
So I have to ask you this. What or how much of that responsibility rests with workers? Because we always hear that, oh, well, the employers aren't doing this, or the government isn't doing that, or we're at a stalemate, or we aren't getting the respect, or there's not that open line of communication. But I want to turn the discussion a bit and ask what responsibility vests with the workers for the state of industrial relations in the country right now?
Okay. I believe that workers should go to work. I believe that they should give a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. I believe that they should be there on time. They should execute their duties in an excellent manner. However, The problem that I see is there's a lack of supervision and management. Because if you give a worker a task to do, for example, if you say to a worker, you have 10 files that I would have given to you on May the 1st, and I would have given you a deadline of May the 14th to have those files completed and turned over to me. Well, May passed, June passed, July passed. The supervisor did not follow through. So to me, the worker can only get away with slackness, or the worker can only have their work incomplete if their managers or supervisors are not following up. That's one of the problems. The other thing is that we are having a major challenge with due process. We have too many, and I would say school leaders or principals or managers throughout the country. They have been promoted through politics. They've been promoted because they were liked or they're more favorable to one person versus the other, but not necessarily because of their competence and their knowledge and experience and training on the job. So the conflict then starts when you have a worker. Let's say the worker did not carry out his or her task in the manner which they should have carried it out or satisfactorily. Instead of that manager or supervisor going through the due process and giving that worker a verbal warning, then writing to them, giving them the mentoring, the training that they need, giving them an opportunity to improve on their performance. No. They go straight to, oh, you need to go to the director, or come out of my school, or so that is the problem. So it goes both ways. But the workers, and I can say to you a lot of times, you may hear me out front and I'm arguing for the teachers, or I'm pushing for the teachers' rights. But I can tell you, when they are wrong, I am on them like white on rice.
Kimberly, I'm very curious as to get your input on it, because members in your union get a lot of criticism.
Well, Jerome, let me say this. The workers in our particular bargaining unit, they are out there, just like Mrs. Wilson's bargaining unit. They're the driving force of what happens in this country, and they're functioning. I want to use a particular entity, those persons at the Beach and Parks Authority. There is no way that you can disregard what they do, because if you do, it reflects. They're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of roadside verges, parks. Yeah. It's very visual. And so they're out there working, but they are not being, like Mrs. Wilson would have said, properly managed. Persons have the mentality that when I would have ascended to a particular position, I no longer have the responsibility for going out there and making certain that the task is properly carried out. And so whenever there's a shortfall on the assignment, supervisors and managers become very critical of persons. And so the assessment as it relates to the workforce and what the responsibility of the worker is in the country doesn't solely rest on the worker themselves, but the manager.
So two things out of this. You would have mentioned, Belinda, that a lot of times people are promoted or even sent to the job due to politics. And, you know, I don't want to skirt around that for one minute.
Favoritism.
And favoritism. These promotions happen as well due to favoritism, etc. But how now do you deal with situations like that when you have people who are either politically appointed or who have ascended or received a promotion or done any manner of things into the workforce now and maybe ill-prepared to deal with their roles as a supervisor, as a manager, or hey, I've been here 20 years, so I got a promotion without any proper training? And what then becomes your role in all of this?
Major challenge. And that's why, for example, we're in the labor department now. We have had 2 sessions of conciliation, and we have a 3rd session on May the 3rd. And ironically, If a principal were to write a concern to the authorities on a teacher, the teacher is called in, the teacher is reprimanded or disciplined. But you have a group of teachers that are writing long lists of grievances, some emanating over periods of time that they're not addressing. So it's like you're stuck with this inept, incompetent leader, and the morale of the school, it's low, the productivity is low, but no one seems to have the guts to say, listen, we would have promoted you. Yes, you are confirmed, but I think you're better suited here or there, but not in the position that you're in.
So there is that inequality.
It's inequality, but it's also the lack of willingness to deal with an issue when we face it.
When I say inequality, because as you would have pointed out, you deal with it, I'll use your union, you deal with the teacher, you deal with the line staff or the worker,
yes,
but nobody's dealing with the manager.
No.
That is the challenge, Jerome. And it goes back to what you would have said earlier regarding persons that are politically appointed to particular positions. For some reason, they are exempt from, so to speak, being examined by those who may be their immediate supervisors. And it's really amazing because we're faced with a situation similar where you have persons that were appointed in particular areas by the chief of the nation. They have supervisors at least 2 or 3 tiers above them, but they're literally in charge. And so So
you're in charge because of your political alignment, whoever you align with
Indeed.
politically.
And so
you could be at the bottom of the totem pole.
What it actually does, it doesn't allow the person who has responsibility for the whole gamut of things to actually carry out their assignment because they're intimidated to some degree by that individual that has been placed politically.
So that goes back to your suggestion that managers and supervisors aren't managing.
Right.
Because
and then when one of our similar situations, I don't want to speak about it too much because we're still in conciliation. But if you were the line staff or teacher and they have moved you within a few years to 5 or 6 different schools because of the same problems, then what is the difference in having a principal whom you've had the same issues with? Someone needs to say, listen, you are not suited for this post. We have to find somewhere else for you. But they are not managing on that level. It's just a beat down of the line staff. The persons at the bottom are the ones who must be responsible, who must be accountable. But there's no accountability at the top.
So let me tell you what Joe Public sees and what Joe Public experiences. The line staff, the teacher, the non-supervisor, the non-manager, for the most part, are the people that we interact with. So these are the people who we generally have the most issues with. The bad service, all kinds of things, not getting your work done, people coming to work late, all manner of things that you are faced with as a member of the public on a daily basis. But then you pick up the newspaper, you turn on the television, and there is industrial unrest. The union is demanding this because, we want better wages, better benefits, etc. But the public has no appetite for this because this is what you're asking for is certainly not concurrent with what the public is receiving on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Jerome, let me say this. Normally, you would find even trade unionists, we critique not all the time the good stuff, but there's some breaches, there's some negative stuff that we look at that actually have an impact on the rights of the worker in the workplace. And so you would find that while we are ready and willing to commend persons for the job that they're doing. We're going to look more closely at how the rights of the workers are being disenfranchised. And so, again, that is lowering the morale in the workplace. And so the productivity of those individuals are not readily being seen, but they are literally out there doing their jobs. If you go to road traffic, for instance, you're going to go there, maybe the lines are long simply because of the number of persons that may have a birthday in March or April or May. But those people out there, they're working. Now, who is actually assessing those individuals to ensure that they're not only properly compensated, but rewarded for the hard work that they're putting in to make sure that the wheels of the public service is turning in the fashion that it's turning. But when you look at it, the credit doesn't go to the people that are actually making it happen. It literally goes to the person at the head.
I still go back to leadership and accountability, because if you're saying that you, and what you are saying, I will agree, that the public does not see where there's a balance between service and what the union is asking for. I'll give you that. However, I go back again to leadership, because each of those individuals that you would be in contact with on a daily basis, they have a supervisor. At the end of each year, they have an annual confidential report. So if you are getting 5s on your annual confidential report, then it means that you are excellent. So where is the supervisor who is in charge of that area, the counter that you say you're coming to and you were not pleased? I could tell you, for me, although I'm a trade union leader, I demand good service, and when I don't get it, I write. Okay. I stand there and I say, hey, I want to see the supervisor.
Let's stick a pin in that, because we've got to take a break, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want to explore that a little bit more to see how this all ties in. Stay with us. We are talking to trade unionists Kimsley Ferguson and Belinda Wilson. Our topic is union unrest, tales of black summers and the likes. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to On the Record. My guests tonight, Kimsley Ferguson and Belinda Wilson. We are really in the midst of what I think is a discussion that really gets to some of the heart of the issues, because a lot of times you'll find the country is divided on trade unions, trade unionists, and even workers, because for many of us, it is a very different experience from what it is that you're agitating for. And I'll give you an example. I'm glad that you brought up road traffic. In February, I went to get my car licensed, and there was a document that I did that needed to be corrected. But the young lady was so rude to me, and unjustifiably. It completely destroyed my entire experience within the road traffic department. And so you walk away from that scarred. You go into, I went into another department just recently, and the fella he laying down on the desk on his phone and seemingly gets annoyed because I'm disturbing him, because I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody else in the office about getting a permit for something, and he literally gets up, and because we're in a discourse about what's needed, and he get up and walk out and like I disturb him. But then at the end of the day, you have to now come and seek public support. In instances like this, you have to come seek public support for workers when the public's experience is so different.
Jerome, we would have had a little discussion, I think last week sometime, with the Minister of the Public Service. Mm-hmm. And one of the concerns that the union would have had is that training exercises are not having been taking place frequently. And the minister appeared very taken back.
Because he didn't know? Or?
Well, according to him, the various communications are going down, training modules are happening, but the concerns from the workers at the lower level is that when these particular correspondences reach the department, the due date has already expired. And so it's a concern for us. It's a concern for us.
So you're trading, but the data's passed.
The data's passed, and so
and nobody sees anything wrong with this. And a red light doesn't go off somewhere.
Leadership.
Wow.
But let me finish my statement. The concern that I have with regards to what you would have said about your customer experience is that we are actually putting persons in positions of responsibility simply because there's no one there. Then we are not concerned as to whether or not they're properly trained to confront the public and to ensure a very, very positive customer experience. And so I want to say nationally that the Bahamas Public Service Union does not endorse any type of negative behavior on behalf of its membership, but we make an appeal to the government to assist and let us partner in ensuring that those persons who face the public are properly trained to do so.
So at the heart of all of this then is that we are putting out a workforce of individuals who are not trained, not just in, or they may be trained in how to do their job at some level, but in dealing with the public, because that's a very important part of what we do.
That's social skills. And you would know that I've been hammering now, I think, I have to be about 15 years now, curriculum reform, curriculum revision. Now, yesterday, the Ministry of Education had a forum, and so that was a part of it. So I hope that moving forward, they have a cycle for 2018 to 2023. So I hope that we will see some fruits from there. But the soft skills are needed. Yes, you spoke about the persons in road traffic and the manner in which she would have spoken to you. Now, for me, I would not have left until I saw the road traffic controller. And I was going to deal with that right then and there. That's the first thing.
But then people say, "Oh, you costing me my job."
No, but too many times
and then you're attacked.
No, too many times we walk away, which goes back again to the due process, because you would have given a grievance or a complaint that had to be investigated. If there were witnesses there, they would be able to verify what you were saying. And she would have been warned, disciplined, something written for the file. She should have been sent then to the training, which time would have already passed. Yeah, that the circular came and the time was gone. Yes, but training in that area, in the soft skills area. After you would have done that and you realize that you would have gotten maybe 2 or 3 or more complaints, then you know that this individuals may have to be moved from the front line and into another area. So retooling.
But then now you have another issue, because a lot of times people are moved around, and so the problem now comes from the front and goes to the back, because we haven't.
We have a unique situation that I would have seen happening in the public service. And there's a rippling effect, because one thing has to do with the next. Persons are moved from the front to the back. Instead, we are moving the problem instead of rectifying the problem.
Is my question, yes.
And
we're
so
moving the problem to become someone else's problem.
Indeed. And so while a lot of it rests on being properly trained, there was a compensation study done about
2006,
maybe about 2006, thereabout. The only portion of the compensation study that was emphasized was the service side of it. And now what we're experiencing is a reflection of how much emphasis was placed on that particular portion of the compensation study. But I want to say this, while there wasn't sufficient emphasis placed, the morale of the workers in the workplace has diminished to some degree. And so hence we may see a particular attitude from public servants, not being mindful of what our jobs are and the fact that we serve the Bahamian public. And so we demand of persons in the hospitality industry that they have a pleasant attitude. It's incumbent upon us as public servants to have the same pleasant attitude, not simply because we're working for a tip, but simply because we are serving the public.
Let's not have that tip conversation.
You talking about corruption?
That's a whole other show.
I don't want to leave the part where you talked about the union's agitation.
Yes.
And the union's agitation coming to the public domain. Let me say this to you. For example, again, we have 5 trade disputes in the Department of Labor as we speak. However, I can produce for you, let's say just one instance I'll use. I can produce for you documentation, written grievances, written letters, emails, telephone calls, meetings held, attempts to have meetings held on one of those matters from September of last year. So you write, you're ignored. You call, the calls are not returned. You go into meetings, the meetings don't yield any results.
Just curious,
So
these
you're
meetings
left.
are with officials from the Department of Labor, the minister in particular, or
No,
whomever?
not the Department of Labor. Okay, when you have a grievance against a principal, you would first bring that grievance to the district superintendent level. Request a meeting on that level. If it is not resolved on that level, then you take it up to the director of education. Then you take it to the permanent secretary. So if you are writing to the district superintendent, you've written to the principal, you copy the district superintendent, the director, the permanent secretary, the minister in some instances. And so you've written to all of them over a period of 4, 5, 6 months. No responses. You request meetings. The meetings are not granted. They don't even return your call. You have teachers who are saying, listen, what is it that the union is doing? We would have brought this matter to your attention 3 months ago. So the only avenue you then have is to have industrial action or to file trade disputes.
Is this a similar situation?
I thought I was the only one having this experience because one of the things
You say that in sarcasm, right?
I say that very sarcastically, but I'm serious about it because we have been making every effort to contact the managers at the various levels, managers, supervisors, permanent secretaries, to no avail. And our industrial agreement on the industrial goodwill suggests that we should have access to these various levels of management. And so that is what was communicated to the Minister of Public Service. We have a situation in Freeport right now as we speak regarding the Ministry of Agriculture where the air conditioning is not working, which is compounding the problem of mold. And a lot of our persons are challenged with respiratory illnesses. And for some reason, the managers at the very top don't seem to have a regard for the well-being of our membership. And so we're taking a zero-tolerance approach to this particular kind of behavior. We want to resolve issues based on the grievance procedure. But if we're not being afforded the opportunity to address these concerns in an amicable way, then we're going to have to do what it is we need to do.
So really you respond when you feel your back is against the wall
Yeah,
and there's nowhere else to go.
after everything else has failed, because, okay, if I can produce for you 10 letters in the space of 5 months, I've recorded all of the times that I've called your office and left messages.
You take time to do all of this?
Yes, I can pull 4, 5, 6 emails, all on the same matters now. 4, 5, 6 emails. I can, I would have seen you in passing and say, hey, we have to get together to deal with X, Y, Z. Then I go to your school for a meeting that's planned and the police is there. The gate is locked. You are causing conflict you're agitating, you're irritating, you're causing a problem to escalate. And let me tell you what happens too. Instead of dealing with the problem or the grievances, you reassign a teacher. Or you say, oh, the union can't have meetings on the campus. That's the kind of nasty, little petty things that is being done to our union.
You're having the same thing, but it seems you're being agitated.
Jerome, I believe that we're heading towards another Burma Road in this country.
Really? That serious?
It's the rights of workers. Persons, while we may have a challenge with a few persons who may not be up to speed from a service standpoint, we have the majority of public servants out there doing the best that they can to keep the wheels of this country turning. And they're being blatantly disregarded. We have a number of excuses that are forthcoming when we try to look into the various grievances these persons may have. Let's look at promotion as one of those issues. There are policies that are being put in place that the union don't have any knowledge of. And it's affecting the advancement of persons. One young lady came to me no later than yesterday, and she said that she was told to proceed to the Department of Public Service for an interview. And so it was kind of strange to me because the level that the young lady is at, an interview is really not required for her to advance to the next level. And if a policy was put in place, then when is the union going to be informed? And so hence, she was sent a communication saying to her that she would be considered in the next round of promotion. And this is the second time that she has been overlooked.
I'm glad he raised the point about policies coming down. For us, you know, in education, there are circulars. So a circular comes out, it's in the schools. I get it on a WhatsApp from a teacher. Hey, Miss Wilson, how the union agreed to this? I don't know anything about it. No one said anything to me. So that is a problem. And yesterday, the forum for the ministry was moving from policy to implementation. And I'm dying to see that. I'm dying to see that because the consultation with the union, the discussions with the union, it's not held. It's not held on that level. Now, I'm not speaking about the union requesting a meeting with the Minister of Education. And let me put this out there. Belinda and Jeff, I can call it that. That's the names our parents gave us. Belinda and Jeff.
Jeff being the minister.
I can get to that part.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have no issue, and to my knowledge, Mr. Jeff has no issue with Belinda. Belinda Wilson, the president of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, and the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd, the Minister of Education, have a duty to do. Both of us. Both of us have constituents, and I have to do my job, and he has to do his. So when it's all the minister and Miss Wilson, hey, no. It is the president and the Minister of Education.
I want to put a pin in that because we've got to go to a commercial break. But when I come back, I do want to talk about how these things are fueled in the public and really, you know, how social media and even the media are used sometimes for both sides to talk to each other and how that works. We are now coming to the end of the first half of tonight's show. Our topic is Union Unrest, Tales of Black Summers and the Likes. Our guests, Kingsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Services Union, and Belinda Wilson, President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers. Stay with us, we're back right after this. welcome back to the second half of our show. Our topic tonight is union unrest, tales of black summers and the like. My guests, Belinda Wilson and Kimsley Ferguson. As we went into that break, we began to explore really policy and how policy is changing. But my question is, and having sat in a management role in two different instances and having to deal with the union, you set policies and procedures that are relative to the business or the running of the department or the running of the entity or whatever it is. But then how, and pardon me for asking it this way, how does that become the business of the union when I've put things in place to run my department or to run my area, things that have to do with the everyday, day-to-day running that really do not speak to, let's say, the industrial agreement, because, you know, it doesn't directly or doesn't appear to directly impact. So my question is, you know, if I'm doing something to better the running of my department or area or whatever, why is that the union's business?
Well, everything dealing with the employee is the union's business when you talk about the terms and conditions of their service. So, for example, if you hired me today and you gave me a job description, however, in your assessment of what I'm doing and the assessment on where you want to take the ministry or the department, it calls for an adjustment in that job description, then you should treat with, you should speak to, you should send a draft to the union, because the union can assist you not only in making that policy tighter or better or more quality policy, but the union can also assist you with the public relations and marketing of what it is that you want to implement or you want to change.
But a lot of times the union shows up and it's almost like, from the minute you walk through the door, it's almost like an adversarial interaction.
Well, when there's an implementation of policy, one of the first things that we look for is to ensure that there's no violation of the rights as it relates to the members. We want to ensure too that when you would have looked at, like Mrs. Wilson said a while ago, moving forward the department, we want to ensure that if you're giving added responsibility in those particular policies, that persons are going to be given the proper compensation. Because if you're not careful, people are actually promoted in a policy but without proper compensation. So they're literally given responsibilities for new duties and there's no compensation for it. So anything that's ultra-virus in the policy and contrary to whatever agreements that are in place, those are the things that the union really looks for.
Now, when you say compensation, does it always have to be monetary?
Well, not necessarily so, because...
and there's a reason I...
Let's just say a manager or supervisor, a form of compensation for them may be casual days. Mm-hmm. Okay, or there's an extension of some other benefit or privilege that they may have. So it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. Okay,
so again, to that point, do you think the problem lies, though, with managers and people in authority understanding what is supposed to be that relationship? And I'm interested, Belinda, you said, you know, the union can assist, you know, in this regard, in helping to implement that policy. And that's something I've never heard in any discussion with any union.
Yes, actually, okay. You know, we have a collective bargaining agreement right now. This is our third consecutive one. In this collective bargaining agreement, we have where 18 months after the agreement is signed, we should have a committee comprised of the union, persons from the public service, education, to look at the annual confidential report. We have in there where there should be a committee comprised for health and safety, a medical review committee. We have in there where we should be looking at curriculum, the curriculum revision. But whenever people talk about unions, they always talk about, oh, they're looking for money.
But
our agreement is 68 pages and it has about 43 clauses in it.
So what happens? I mean, you know, you invite the media in for the big signing, the minister on one side, or with the PS on one side, the union president next side, that industrial agreement side, and
the first thing that the press carries
is the money.
Oh, they received 5% of whatever,
increase.
And everything else gets lost.
So what happens? All these wonderful things that you've talked about, and I'm going to get you into this. You know, you sign these agreements, and then you basically don't hear anything else until it's time to come back to the table or there's some breach.
Okay, let me answer that, please. Okay, you sign the agreement. For example, our agreement says we should have a curriculum revision team comprised of the BUT. So then I would write to education and say, clause 27 says we should have a committee. So I'm now sending the names of my 2 individuals for that committee. Okay, so I send my names, and 3 years later, I'm still waiting for their names or the first meeting. There's no follow-through, there's no monitoring, there's no assessment, there's no evaluation of the agreement. And it's always the union having to be the watchdog to ensure...
Or a dog.
Yeah, the pit bull, to ensure that what we would have agreed, both parties, is carried out.
Interesting.
It's a partnership, and we have extended ourselves to the various departments and ministries that we have responsibility for. And we don't just want to appear adversarial to some degree, but I think there's a battle between agendas, whereas we can actually assist with carrying out the agenda of the employee as well, as long as, 1, it's beneficial to the Bahamian public, 2, and it's beneficial to the workers that we represent. But the thing becomes very, very lopsided to some degree. The employer has an adamant concern about this is the direction that we're heading, and no tables are going to be unturned while we're in pursuit of this. And in that happening, you find that there is a disregard for workers. And so it then brings on an adversarial approach from the union, because now we have to protect those workers. Like Mrs. Wilson said, the minister, he has constituents, and so do we. We do not want to appear to be sitting idly while the employer tramples our membership, who we are paid to represent. Okay. And so when you see the conflict part of things begin to happen, is because there is a disregard for what is written.
So I want to throw this at you, because I've seen it happen. I've been in journalism long enough and been around long enough to see it. You see a particular union leader and a particular union agitating. They're calling you every day, almost in the press, and it's one issue after the next. It can't be resolved. They're threatening action, etc. And next thing you know, election time coming, and this union leader running for office.
It's a concern.
So it now begs the question whether what was happening was authentic, or were you laying the groundwork for your political platform?
Okay, you made...
So hold on, you got to think.
I'd like to answer that.
Go ahead.
You know, I believe...
I could name quite a few.
The late Dr. Miles Monroe wrote a book, The Power of Character, the power and principle of character in leadership. Mm-hmm. I believe that those very attributes today hang in the balance as it relates to our leaders. I'm very disappointed with trade union leaders who may exploit their membership with a quest to move into the political arena. While I do believe that there are some trade unionists that may have a contribution to make at the political level, look at it this way. I believe that trade union leaders can accomplish more from the platform that they actually have right now, because in the political arena, you're to some degree muffled as to what you're
subject to the party line.
Yes.
But it does erode at the public's and even the workers' confidence in your motives, because if you are seen to be leading me and agitating and then turn around and you on the campaign stage,
That's a
I'm
problem.
glad you said it.
Listen, that's a problem. And let me get the elephant out of the room. That is a problem for the trade union movement in this country. We have too many trade union leaders who are looking for board appointment and promotions. Listen, we are paid by the members. Do your job. Let me tell you something else too, what people don't realize. You work and others will see your work and your worth. And then you will be elevated. But we too busy looking over our shoulder to see what board we could be appointed to for a couple extra dollars. That's a problem.
Now let me say something. That has an objective view as well. If you go back in retrospect, remember Bobby Clinton, Mr. Brennan, all of these persons who actually ascended to politics were trade union leaders. Now, the flip side to that,
times were different.
The flip side to that is politicians actually understand that if we don't get this particular person out of the arena, we're going to find ourselves challenged as an administration. And so what they do, they sort of make an attempt to pick you off by causing there to appear as if there's some relationship between you and them. But my opinion is trade union leaders ought to be just that, trade union leaders. And they ought to pursue what is in the best interest, not only of the membership, but the country at large.
And I would think that if you have your sights set on politics, you have to separate yourself for a period from that. Not you go from the head of the union straight to the nomination day.
I agree. But and let me say something else too. I don't think there's anything wrong with a trade union leader running in politics. I have no issue with that. However, what I'm saying is when you have to do the people's work, the work for your members, don't give a 5-cent whether it's the PLP, the FNM, the DNA, the Independent, the BDP, the CDR, whoever. Do your job. And that's why for me, say whatever you want to say about Belinda Wilson, I'm consistent.
There is what actually is birthed from aspirations as such is one of the evidences of it is you see a compromise, so to speak. And
we're living in
members,
you see that all the time. Members feel that way and they see it.
Members actually recognize it. So while you may appear silent on particular issues, people now are aware that you're beginning to sing for your supper. And so while you can stand firm on the very issues that you've been actually elected to represent, you can at the same time be a very firm individual and pursue whatever your aspirations are. But do not sell your members out. Let me put it in colloquial terms.
Well, that's a good place for us to take a break. We're at the final break in our show. We're going to be back with more on the record right after this. Welcome back to On the Record. This is our final segment in this episode. We have been discussing union unrest, tales of black summers and the likes with our guests, Kingsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Services Union, and Belinda Wilson, President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers. As this is a show that is primarily based in politics, we will always try to bring in the political element. And, you know, the history of this country and our march to majority rule and even independence are intertwined in the labor movement. And there are great figures who would have ascended to great positions of power, who would have gotten their start in the labor union, in the labor movement and within unions. And So the two have been tied together historically and continues to happen today. And to your point, there are great men and women who have come out of the labor movement, who've gone on to do great things in politics. But, you know, when you are looking at situations as, let's say, where you have a situation where, in the case of the BEC workers and their union now threatening industrial action over the summer, you know, and you have other unions who have come out to express, you know, their disappointment, disgust with what's happening, you know, in government and in politics. A lot of times, people are left with a jaded view, because as a public, sometimes you're not quite sure if this action or what you're seeing is completely in the best interest of the public, or is it being motivated by something else? And at the end of the day, who does it benefit and who does it hurt the most?
I want to say something, and I'd have to go back to a reference that you would have made earlier about us expecting the Bahamian public to give us some support when we carry out these industrial actions. It is expected of every trade union leader to exhaust every avenue.
Do they know that, sir?
We do.
I do it.
To exhaust every avenue
sometimes have to ask
before
industrial action or strike or protest
conclude or result in industrial unrest. And a lot of that process really is invisible. And so you would find when a trade union leader reaches a point where he's going or she's going to take industrial action, they would allude to the process that they took up to the point where they are. And you would find them calling the positions of the persons that they would have probably endeavored to have a discourse with to try to resolve the matter.
Sometimes the media and the public really is your last resort. It's the only time you think you could really get attention.
Indeed.
And you know what's so sad about it? You would write for 6 months consecutively, call, try to get meetings, and you are ignored. As soon as the press interviews you, then, oh, y'all can meet today? Why? Why?
The consultative
but
process.
Knowing that, okay, I'm glad you said that, but knowing that, do some leaders abuse that now as a way to get immediate attention and to get their members to think, oh, well, he out there working for me because, you know, he talks to the media.
That is when the public will know that you're being hypocritical. Because the only concern that you have is a resolve. You don't necessarily just want camera time. If you can resolve that concern without the media involved, then that's what it's all about. And so I would have had the experience of trying to get a matter resolved at a particular level in the Ministry of Agriculture. When I went to the individual told me, I take instructions from so-and-so. So I said to the individual, I said, I was hoping that we wouldn't have had to go to the top.
Higher level. Mm-hmm.
And so I went and I made an appointment to see the permanent secretary. Of course, I didn't get that appointment yet. And so that matter is still left hanging in the balance, well, like Mrs.
Hopefully
Wilson
they're watching
said.
Right. Hoping they're watching the show.
Okay, the same thing happened to me. Remember the H.O. Nash incident, the twerking video? All right. And I made a call to the acting director. Plus, I wrote a letter to him. His response to me was, he can respond to me when I follow the grievance procedure, which says that I should really be writing to the permanent secretary about the matter. So if I'm picking up the phone to call you to say, hey, something has happened at a school campus, can we talk about this or discuss this?
Quickly, yeah,
okay. Well, I didn't follow the proper protocol, so I wrote to the permanent secretary. That's from October last year. I'm still awaiting a response.
Maybe you didn't get the letter yet.
We got a communication. There's this particular permanent secretary we've been trying to see from October 2017.
Oh, you too?
And we wrote. We got a communication back yesterday. That person is now advising us to go and see someone else. But there are some issues in the communication that we would have forwarded that we need to see that particular individual about. And so we're challenged, and I believe that persons are trying to take unions for low fence in this country.
Explain.
We want to encourage and cause the employer to be mindful that these are the people that make things happen in this country. And let me explain what I mean by low fence. They're going to test you to see to what extent that you would go to get what it is you need. If it's conflicting and it's breaching the rights and benefits and privileges of the membership, we're going to go to the very extent possible, whatever it is, maybe industrial action, we're going to take it to the highest level.
So let me sort of bring this up. It has become very apparent and clear from this discussion that a lot of issues are really at the senior level of government. Whether it be at the director or the permanent secretary or somebody in there who has the power to either see, deal, address with, give you audience, etc. And these, it seems that there is sort of a bottleneck of the issues, but then it explodes, and now it's egg on the face of government. And when I say government, I'm talking about at the very highest level, the cabinet level, the ministerial level. But these permanent secretaries and directors, etc., they exist despite changing governments and despite ministers. These are the positions that are, if I could use the term, evergreen. They're not supposed to change.
But
is this the level now at where the problems exist?
Let me say something. There is a system in place. If everything functions the way they're supposed to, it works. It works. At the convenience of particular persons, we get a response. When it's not convenient, we don't get a response. And so there you have the bottleneck of all the issues not addressed. And so when something unfavorable or that causes persons to appear in a particular light happens, they want to run quickly to try to out the fire. We want to out the fire with an attitude that, hey, we're partners. And to a lot of the directors and managers' credit, we do have some people who act in a really civil way. And so we don't want to just throw everybody under the bus. They're just particular individuals who has the final say on particular things that we have a challenge in getting resolved.
We're about to wrap up, and so I'm going to give you these last few minutes to just wrap up. And I wanted to go to a very critical question to both of you that, you know, we started out this show talking about the state of industrial unrest, but from your perspective, what is the relationship between this government now and the unions and the industrial movement? Both of you, and your final comments on that.
I'll say quickly, you hit the nail on the head. Okay, and I can speak about the Bahamas Union of Teachers. The Minister of Education and the President and leadership of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, we've had an open dialogue. We've had no issues communicating for a year now, from last year, May to present. The problem exists with the permanent secretary, the acting director or director, the deputy permanent secretaries. There are individuals in there who have access to grind, who have old beef.
They have a problem with you.
Yeah, and it's personal, and they lose sight of the individual representing 4,000 persons. I'm not your friend. I didn't ask to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend. What I want is, when I write to you a genuine complaint or grievance, deal with it.
Okay.
I crave to be able to express the sentiments that Mrs. Wilson expressed a while ago concerning the fact that the persons that are necessary for the advancement of her cause are accessible. I crave, because I've been challenged in accessing
so you couldn't
these
have
persons,
access to the minister.
And so we are not in a position to try to build that relationship that is necessary. Some persons are telling you to send them an email on certain issues. And so today, I don't have any axe to grind with any particular individual. There is a cause. there is an effect when those causes or issues are not addressed. And we're going to stand by what is in the best interest of our people. We're going to be resolute about it, and we're not going to compromise, but at the same time, we want to reason together so that we can accomplish what is necessary on behalf of our people.
I do want to thank you for coming on tonight and for really having such an informative, in-depth discussion. I guess the audience is wondering what happened to the Electrical Workers Union. I know those folks couldn't make it. We did invite them on tonight, but certainly they were not able to make it. And of course, that being, I guess, one of the biggest issues out there right now that potentially can lead to some serious unrest. And so we wanted to make it clear that we did not ignore that issue, but certainly the head of the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union was unable to join us, as were some others. But I do want to say that you all have done a fantastic job in helping to bring some understanding to how this whole issue of the labor movement and unions work, and what is supposed to be the relationship with the various entities, organizations, etc., and also to the responsibility of the workers, managers and supervisors, because a lot of times I think we miss the point that as employees, as workers, as supervisors, as managers on the job, we all have a role to play, not just show up to work, but to ensure that we create some kind of harmony in the workplace and on the job. So I do want to thank you very much for coming by this evening and spending this time with us. We certainly hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to our guests, Belinda Wilson, Kimsley Ferguson, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, the audience, for watching. Be sure and join us for more On the Record next week. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time.